Roansy Contreras was pretty impressive in his Orioles debut on Wednesday night, but he could only watch as the O's blew a late lead and fell again to the Red Sox. I'll recap it all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Thursday, August 28th, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap a heartbreaking ninth inning 3-2 loss for the Orioles against the Boston Red Sox on Wednesday night. I'll get to the 5 things you need to know from that one, including a great O's debut from Roansy Contreras, another great game from Dylan Beavers, and an unfortunate ending for Keegan Akin in the ninth inning. Then we'll talk about the slew of roster moves that the Orioles made before Wednesday's game, and probably the most interesting one was a not super impactful swap at third base that we'll get to, and then some unfortunate injury news for Brandon Young. And finally, the O's have another reliever to add to the villa of guys trying to make this team for next year as Shawn Dubin comes in on waivers. I'll give you his scouting report as he is set to join the team here on Thursday. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So let's start with, what would generally be a heartbreaking Orioles loss. It feels pretty numb to a lot of these losses as the O's now sit at 60-73 this season, and we're heading towards September. They are clearly out of the race. They don't hurt as much as they did a couple of months ago, but when you're not getting a lot of wins lately and you feel like you have one against the Boston Red Sox as a playoff team, you can kind of spoil things for them. It does hurt a little bit more. Final score from Wednesday night at Oriole Park is the Boston Red Sox 3 and the Orioles 2 in Game 3 of a 4-game set. The Red Sox have taken all 3 in this series now and will go for the mop of the Orioles on Thursday afternoon. But I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from this Orioles loss on Wednesday. And the first thing you need to know is using Dietrich Enns as the opener for the Orioles on Wednesday worked out pretty well. It was his 9th appearance with the O's, but his first start. Now, it wasn't a true start. Mansolino had said earlier this week it was going to be an opener with more of a bulk pitcher behind him. And Enns had been a starter in the past, had been a starter over in Korea. Actually, his first 2 outings of this year with the Tigers before they DFA'd him, they were both starts of 5 innings and then 4 innings. And he went 2 2/3 innings on Wednesday, which tied for his second longest relief outing of the year. Did have a 3-inning relief outing early in the season with the Tigers as well, but 2 2/3, 1 run, 2 hits, 3 Ks, and no walks on 34 pitches for your opener. You're absolutely going to take that. The only run, leadoff batter, Roman Anthony, 3-1 fastball, drives it over the center field fence to start the game and put the Red Sox up 1-0. And then Enns just kind of locked in after that, gave up 1 other hit and recorded 8 outs for the Orioles, and his longest appearance with the O's. You will certainly take that in this spot. And again, he's a guy as a left-handed pitcher who actually gets right-handed hitters out at a higher rate than lefties, which allows him to go multiple innings. It's the reason he began this season as a starter, was a starter in the minor leagues this year. Like, he gave up that leadoff homer, was good after that. I thought the fastball had good velocity. The changeup got 4 whiffs. It had good shape, and he's looking to be a guy where it does make it hard because he is out of minor league options. So if you want to take him off the roster, you'd have to DFA him, but he's going to make it through the end of this year. I mean, he's going to at least make it into the offseason on the Orioles roster. The question is, does he make it to spring training, still in the Orioles 40-man roster? But he's shaping up to be a guy who might get kept in this Orioles bullpen for 2026. This is all an audition for next year. Could maybe even be a starting option for next year. It's a good, solid, under-the-radar pickup by the Orioles in Dietrich Enns. Second thing you need to know from Wednesday is that the Orioles then went to Roansy Contreras as kind of the quote-unquote bulk pitcher to follow the opener, and he was even better. The Orioles called up Contreras, added him to the roster on Wednesday. Mansolino had said on Tuesday that Contreras, who was already with the team on the taxi squad, would be the bulk pitcher and pitch the majority of the innings. on Wednesday night in his Orioles debut, and that is what he did. Contreras, it's been a winding road to get here, was claimed on waivers by the Orioles multiple times just this offseason. He was DFA'd like 6 times in the past year. He was a former top prospect with both the Yankees and the Pirates, had a great 2022 rookie year in Pittsburgh, then just kind of fell off a cliff since then, went to a reliever, was a bad reliever, DFA'd, was a not great reliever with the Angels last year, bounced around teams, but he's kind of settled in at Norfolk this year. He began the year as a reliever, but the Orioles built him back up to be a starting pitcher. And in about 92 innings, he posted a 3.73 ERA for the Tides this year. Not a very high strikeout rate, but a pretty low walk rate as well. And you liked what you saw. The Orioles clearly wanted to just kind of push everyone back a day, starting with Cade Povich, who could have started this Wednesday game, but he's going to start on Thursday, and figured they would call up another starter, and that was Contreras. And again, he works as kind of the bulk guy, but he was good. He relieves Dietrich Enns with 2 outs in the third. He hits Alex Bregman with a 98-mile-per-hour fastball on his second pitch. Little amped up, nerves, jitters going. Hasn't pitched in the big league since last year. But then he looked great after that. Like, he was throwing strikes. He was mixing pitches. We saw 6 different pitches from Contreras in this game, which was pretty impressive to have that big of a mix still. At this point, when he's bounced in between the bullpen and the rotation, he was up to 98 with both fastballs, the 4-seamer and the sinker. Some of that was adrenaline in his first big league outing in almost a year, but he was sitting 94, 95 in AAA, and that velo was clearly up. I thought the curveball had really good shape. I liked those like hard 89, 90 mile per hour changeups he was throwing to left-handed hitters. It was a good, solid mix, and you can see why so many teams were claiming him on waivers. He is out of options, so it makes it tough for kind of what his future looks like, but you can see why he was so good that rookie year with the Pirates. He's still only 25 years old. You can see why teams want this guy. And then Tony Mansolino was in kind of a weird spot. Orioles take the lead in the bottom of the 7th. Contreras at that point was through 4 1/3, and he was only at 61 pitches. You're headed to the top of the 8th with a 2-1 lead, 8 and 9 due up at the bottom of the Red Sox order. And Mansolino left him out there in the 8th inning. Like, could have gone to more of the high leverage relievers to hold that lead. But again, we are in development time right now. And I like that Mansolino tried to allow him to get a couple more hitters. Didn't work out. Unfortunately, issued his first walk of the day to Connor Wong. Then a single by David Hamilton, put runners on the corners, flipped the lineup, and that was it for Contreras. But overall, you're looking at a good outing. 4 1/3 scoreless, 3 hits, 2 Ks, 1 walk, 71 pitches in bulk. It'd be really interesting to see what his future is now with the Orioles. Like, he could certainly be DFA'd today, and the O's could, bring up another arm. He could stick and make one more start and then leave when Tyler Wells comes back. Or he could stick around in the bullpen for a while, and Tyler Wells is not going to come back until after September 1st, which is when rosters expand. So Wells could just come up as that extra pitcher on the roster, and they could keep Contreras kind of back into a bullpen role for the rest of the season. I'm really intrigued to see what they do with him moving forward. Now, they do have to add Shawn Dubin to the roster on Thursday, so that puts Contreras in a little bit of jeopardy. But if he survives that move, he may stick around for a little bit longer. This also could have been just an Orioles saying, hey, thanks for eating so many innings in AAA. We're going to give you a showcase outing in the big leagues, and hopefully another team you can catch on with and have a big league career. So we will certainly see what goes on there. Third thing you need to know from Wednesday's game is that Keegan Akin came in that jam in the 8th, and at first he played the role of Houdini to help out Contreras. The reason why Contreras did not have an earned run on his ledger is that Akin entered the game 1st and 3rd, no outs, top of the order due up for the Red Sox. Orioles clinging to a 2-1 lead in the 8th inning. He strikes out Roman Anthony. He strikes out Alex Bregman on a 3-2 slider in the dirt, a guy who mashes lefties, and then gets Trevor Story to ground out to end the inning, somehow escapes the jam. Akin's been the Orioles' best pitcher and one of the best in baseball in stranding inherited runners out of the bullpen this year. He did it again on Wednesday night, and he didn't throw that many pitches. He's a guy who's been known to go multiple innings for most of his relief career, so it's not a giant shock that Akin came back out there for the 9th inning. But as Ben McDonald said on the broadcast in the bottom of the 8th, he was worried about Akin going back out there just because of the adrenaline high you get from coming into the game, getting out of such a big jam to preserve the lead. It can sometimes be tough to then sit for a half inning while your team's hitting and get that adrenaline back and go back out there in the 9th. Kevin Brown actually mentioned it. If you remember last week in Boston, when Rico Garcia came in, remember, bases loaded, no outs, Orioles up by 2 in the 8th. He strikes out 3 consecutive Red Sox to get out of that jam. Garcia's a guy who regularly goes multiple innings, but Tony Mansolino didn't put him back out there in the 9th because he just thought with that adrenaline going down, he might not be the same pitcher. He did not treat Akin the same way in this game. He went back out there, and again, it's process versus results, but the results were not good. He allowed an 0-2 single to Jarren Duran to start the inning, then hung a changeup, and Cedar Rafaela put it over the left center field wall for a 2-run homer, flipping the game, putting the Red Sox up 3-2. Akin blows the save, and it stinks that it worked out that way. Akin even stayed in the game and, retired the next 3 hitters to finish off that 9th inning and actually, record 6 outs in this game, but didn't get them soon enough. And, it's been kind of an insane amount of hit or miss for Keegan Akin lately when he's been in these high leverage situations since the Orioles traded away 4 of their highest leverage relievers. And then Felix Bautista went down with the injury. This was kind of a high and a low in this situation. The 8th was the high. The 9th was the low for him. I've said it, like, I'm totally fine with Akin being a high leverage guy. He's the most experienced reliever by far in this bullpen. But I've also made it clear that I'm cool if he just doesn't get save opportunities for the rest of the year. He seems to struggle in that spot. I'd rather them go to some of these younger guys trying to carve out a role for next year. They had guys available. I mean, Garcia was warming up next to Akin in the 8th, so they could have gone to him in the 9th. They don't. It doesn't work. It is what it is. If it's another guy, right? If it was Yarmil Geraldo blowing that or Grant Wolfram blowing that or whatever, you chalk it up to, hey, this is a big learning experience for him. For Keegan Akin, he's been in the big league since 2020, right? He's in a very different spot than the rest of these relievers. So just didn't work. You move on. Really good in the 8th, and then just couldn't replicate it when he went back out there in the 9th inning. And it was somewhat surprising. That home run Rafaela hit, first home run allowed by Akin on his changeup this season. So it was the right pitch, just wrong result there, and flips the game, and the Orioles lose it in the 9th inning. 4th thing you need to know from this one, though, is that Dylan Beavers he is settling in very, very nicely. Had a little bloop RBI double in the 2nd inning that popped out of the glove of a diving Rafaela in center field that tied the game at 1. Then he smoked a single in the 5th inning at 106.9 off the bat, was his hardest hit ball in the majors so far, almost took off the head of Brian Bayo, who was really good in his start for the Red Sox. And then he came up in the 7th, still against Bayo, drew a huge 2-out walk that extended the inning as Dylan Carlson followed up with an RBI double that put the Orioles up 2-1 in the 7th. It was kind of a weird ball that hit off the base of the wall. Bad communication. Rafaela in center, Duran in left, miscommunication. They both let the ball fall, and Beavers scored to give the Orioles the lead. But he's just, he's not a great looking play in left field in the 9th inning on Tuesday, but otherwise he's been solid in the corner outfield. He's swinging the bat really well. He's walking a ton, right? He's got 8 walks to 11 strikeouts. That's basically exactly what he was doing in AAA. He was pretty much even with walks and strikeouts. He's not going to be this exit velocity king, but he's not chasing out of the zone. He's not swinging and missing. He's squaring the ball up. I mean, that's squared up, and the sweet spots percentage is at like the top of baseball. Like it's looking really, really good. I'm loving this start. Now, he was pretty much it for the Orioles offense once again, as they score 2 runs on 5 hits in this one. They had the 2 hits from Beavers. Carlson had that RBI hit. Kobe Mayo had a single. Jeremiah Jackson had a double. Beavers' walk was the only walk the Orioles drew. They had got 8 runs in their past 4 games after, they started off that weekend against Houston with those 2, Friday and Saturday, great offensive performances. Really haven't seen it since then for the O's, and that was certainly an issue in this one. But shout out to Beavers. He's been looking really, really settled in, and that's what you love to see for a prospect coming up. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles 3-2 loss to the Red Sox on Wednesday is that Samuel Basallo threw out his first runner trying to steal in his big league career. Got the start behind the plate on Wednesday, catching the kind of ends Contreras combination, and he thought he had a caught stealing in the 1st inning. Initially was called an out, but then overturned to safe via video review on a challenge by the Red Sox. But he got his revenge in the 5th. Threw out David Hamilton trying to steal. The throw was 87 miles per hour out of Basallo's hand from behind the plate. That is absurd as a catcher back there. I mean, he is showing off that huge arm strength we continue to hear about. And David Hamilton, it's hard to catch him. Coming in, he's a speedster. He stole an insane amount of bases in the minor leagues. He's 18 for 22 stealing bases in the big leagues this year coming into Wednesday's game. And Basallo cuts him down. Again, there's still work to do with the game calling and the receiving, but the blocking looked good on Wednesday. The arm looked awesome. I mean, not just strong throws, but very accurate throws, both of the ones we saw. Pours over good things for a guy you just gave an 8-year extension to, that he can maybe stick defensively back there behind the plate. But he wasn't able to do anything offensively like the rest of the team. They blow the late lead, and the Orioles have lost the first 3 to the Red Sox. But this roster, to get Roansy Contreras here to make that Orioles debut on Wednesday, there was a little bit of a shakeup, multiple roster moves to talk about when we come back. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Upside. Hey, Orioles fans, are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code FOOTBALL and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You could make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already need. At first, I thought it was too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. So don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using my limited promo code FOOTBALL for a limited time 25-cent per gallon bonus. That is promo code FOOTBALL. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. So the Orioles for Roansy Contreras to make what was an impressive O's debut on Wednesday night. They had to get him here on the roster because not only was he in AAA, he was not even on the Orioles 40-man roster. So there were a plethora of roster moves made on Wednesday. It started with calling up Roansy Contreras to make his Orioles debut and, of course, adding him to the 40-man roster. Now, to make room on the active roster for him, Yarmil Geraldo, the Orioles reliever, was optioned to AAA Norfolk. Now, I've really liked Geraldo's stuff so far. It's a good fastball. It's a devastating changeup. But he's been really inconsistent, even I would say more inconsistent than all these, very inexperienced Orioles relievers that have been in this bullpen for the past month or so. And he does have options. So you're at the end of the point in the season where, yes, you'd obviously rather him be pitching in the big leagues to learn than AAA. But as long as he's healthy and throwing in AAA, the Orioles aren't trying to win right now. It's not the biggest difference in the world. Geraldo will be back, I'm sure of it, in this Orioles bullpen at some point in September, especially with the expanded roster. But right now, you want to hold on to those guys that have options, that don't have options, which means the guys with minor league options are going to be more likely to get sent to AAA, and that is how they opened up a spot for Contreras. Now, on the 40-man roster, it was full, so they also had to open a spot there, and it was Brandon Young, who was transferred from the 15-day to the 60-day injured list. Remember, when you go on the 60-day IL, you no longer count against the 40-man roster. Young went on the 15-day injured list last week with a hamstring injury after he kind of awkwardly stepped on first base covering the bag and then left the game in the 6th inning of his last start against the Astros on Thursday. Mansolino said it, it's going to take some time, but he knew it was more than the 15 days, but wasn't sure the full timeline. We now have a fuller timeline because when you're on the 60-day IL, you have to stay on there for at least 60 days. And 60 days from now, that's well beyond the end of this season. So that does confirm that Brandon Young's 2025 Major League rookie season is over. It was certainly a roller coaster season of up and downs. We'll have a full episode in the offseason recapping his year, but we saw an immaculate inning. We saw 7 2/3 perfect innings. We also saw some really bad outings as well. But I think he put himself in a solid spot to build on stuff and compete for a roster spot, potentially rotation spot in 2026. Unfortunate for him, he'll miss the rest of the year. Good thing is it's hamstring. It's not any kind of arm injury. And look forward to seeing him back on the mound. Former Locked On Orioles guest. Maybe he'll come back on this offseason. Look forward to seeing him back on the mound next season. The Orioles, that seemed to be the roster moves they needed to make if they wanted to get Contreras here. But then they made a couple more that, I don't know, it's not the biggest impact to the roster, but they were kind of interesting to me. So Emmanuel Rivera is back. Of course, Orioles got him here on waivers last year, made the playoff roster. Didn't make the opening day roster this year, but they held on to him. He had a long stint in May and June with the O's, then a short stint in July. So this is his 3rd time up here with the O's. He hasn't hit much. He's had 77 big league plate appearances this year, make it 78 with his ground out on Wednesday, and he's got just a 64 WRC plus. With the O's this year, hasn't impacted the ball with the bat like he did with the Orioles down the stretch last season. And maybe the O's just kind of preferred to have another right-handed hitter on the roster, and they'll probably just DFA Rivera whenever Jordan Westburg comes back from this ankle thing to kind of fill back in at third base. But the interesting thing was they did this and they DFA'd Vimael Machine to make room. And this is interesting for multiple reasons. And again, Rivera and Machine both kind of, utility reserve infielders on a bad team right now. This isn't the biggest roster move in the world. I totally get that, but it was just intriguing, right? Because, okay, maybe you could say, Machine's a left-handed hitter, Rivera's a righty. The way the roster was set up, we just would have rather had a righty on the roster right now. Totally get it. Why didn't you just call up Rivera on Friday then when you added Machine to the roster? Why did you wait, 5 more days and then go to Rivera? And, Vimael Machine comes up Friday, homers in his first at-bat, goes 0 for 10 since then, did get a couple of starts in the Orioles lineup. And maybe the Orioles think, hey, Rivera is an upgrade over Machine. But again, if they thought that, why didn't they just call up Rivera Friday? And again, if it is an upgrade, it's very marginable for a team that's out of the race and two guys who, really won't play much, right, in that position. And you would also think, you could say, oh, well, Rivera is a better defensive third baseman than Machine is. That is completely true. That could be the reasoning. But the Orioles already have Luis Vasquez on this roster as the utility infield guy. He's a fantastic defender, including at third base. And, as they're starting Jeremiah Jackson at third base here with Jordan Westburg out, if they want to go to a defensive replacement like they did at the end of Wednesday's game, you could just go to Luis Vasquez. He plays a great third base. You could maybe argue that Rivera is a little bit better there. Haven't seen enough of either of them to make a call, but is that really worth DFAing a guy in Machine? I'm not saying Vimael Machine is a part of the Orioles' future. He's 31. He's been in AAA all year, but it's just odd because Machine also does have minor league options. So if you wanted to switch things up, you could have gone with a guy on the 40-man, done a different 40-man move and just sent him down to AAA. Now, it's maybe possible that Luis Vasquez might be a little banged up because Rivera did come in defensively for Jeremiah Jackson in the 8th inning on Wednesday. That's why he got an at-bat in this game. And you would think that would be Vasquez's spot. So maybe Vasquez is a little banged up, not enough to go on the injured list, but they wanted Rivera here to be that guy until Westburg comes back. That is possible, but Machine had options, and he was DFA'd when they didn't need to open up a 40-man spot for anyone else. They didn't need to call up Rivera, I don't think. My thought is, and there's a chance this is not the case, but, Machine was at third base, top of the 9th inning on Tuesday, and he, first and second, one out, ground ball hit to third, picks it up, and just kind of takes his sweet time going over to tag the bag at third for the first out, then throws over to first, and it wasn't in time to get the speedy Rafaela. It's a play that should have been a double play if he hurries. Instead, it's only one out, and the Red Sox, when the inning should have been over, end up getting 2 more runs that top of the 9th to kind of pull away in that game. It was a pretty bad mental defensive gaffe for Machine, and I don't think a play like that gets you DFA'd the next day, but is it maybe possible? I would say it's possible. And again, it's not the biggest thing for this roster. Westburg might be back in less than a week, and Rivera's DFA'd too, and it would have been Machine anyway, and it doesn't really matter. But it's intriguing that they made that move. Maybe we'll hear more, maybe we won't, but you have to at least think that had something to do with it, with that play happening in the 9th inning Tuesday, and then the next morning he is off the roster. But from guys off the roster, we go back to guys who are about to join it. Another Orioles waiver claim to join this bullpen and get a tryout the final month of the season. It is Shawn Dubin. We'll tell you about the former Astro joining the O's pen to finish off the show coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Game Time. There is nothing like catching a baseball game live. The energy, the crowd, the chance to see your team in person, but actually getting tickets, that's the tough part. Queues, login screens, surprise fees, it takes all the fun out of it. Well, that's why I use Game Time, the app that gives you the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. And honestly, Game Time, it's faster, it's cheaper, and it's less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets to Orioles games. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. So we're going to talk about Shawn Dubin in just a minute here. But first, we have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcasts even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcasts.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks for helping us out here at Locked On Orioles. Let's talk about Shawn Dubin, the newest Oriole. O's last week, I guess over the weekend, claiming Dubin off waivers from the Houston Astros. Dubin, a 29-year-old right-handed relief pitcher who was an Astros 18th round pick in the 2018 draft out of NAIA school Georgetown College. And if you're wondering, hey, who was in charge of the Astros draft in 2018? Well, that was the last year Mike Elias was in charge of that before being hired by the Orioles. And of course, Elias brings in another former draft pick of his. But Dubin, wild story just through his baseball journey and his life journey in general. Initially, in high school in New York, he was a better soccer player than he was a baseball player. And he actually went to a local junior college to play soccer. But he dropped out after a year and started working at Lowe's until a friend who kind of knew him from his baseball days convinced him to enroll at SUNY Erie, another school below Division I, and try out for the baseball team. He did, made the team as a pitcher, pitched 1 year there, was very successful, and got recruited to transfer to the D1 level, where he transferred to Buffalo, up in Buffalo, New York. He pitched for 2 seasons for Buffalo, and then the program folded. Yes, Buffalo's baseball program folded after the 2017 season, and tons of players, including Shawn Dubin, who had more college eligibility left, but weren't guys that were going to go to the draft, kind of had nowhere to go, and a lot of them scrambled and went to super random schools, and that included Dubin, who found his way to an NAIA school in Kentucky, I believe. This is not Georgetown University in D.C. This is Georgetown College, where he pitched 1 final college season at this small school in 2018 and did enough to get scouted and drafted by the Astros in the 18th round. Mike Elias forever has been scouting these small school pitchers. He does it a lot here with Baltimore. He did it with Shawn Dubin back there with the Astros. So he was a starter throughout the minors, debuted and made it to the big leagues in 2023 with the Astros, a little bit of a starter, a little bit of a reliever. 2024, he made a couple of starts, but was mostly in the bullpen last year and honestly had some good numbers for the Astros last season. He was kind of your typical solid middle reliever for a playoff team. Had a 4.17 ERA, 3.72 FIP in 45 1/3 innings out of the Astros bullpen. Strikeout rate was good at 24%. Walk rate at 13% was kind of concerning. Comes back to the Astros this year and has dealt with injuries. Spent some time on the IL with a shoulder strain and some forearm soreness. You don't love to see that. But overall, with the Astros this season, in between those injuries, pitched in 23 games, 25 2/3 innings, a 5.61 ERA and a 5.58 FIP. You don't love it. K rate is down to 19%. He's slashed the walk rate down to 7%, which is good. But everything else not looking as great for Dubin this year. And you have to think it has to do with the injuries. Like even all the stuff plus numbers are down. His command's been better, but I mean, you have shoulder and forearm. You're clearly going to take a hit on your performance. Now, he returned from that forearm issue from the injured list on August 12th for the Astros, and the Astros ended up DFAing him 11 days later on August 23rd, and the Orioles claimed him. But between those 11 days, he made 5 appearances for the Astros. 3 of them were against the Orioles. Now, you could say, wow, Mike Elias and the O's had an up-close and personal look at Shawn Dubin over the past couple of weeks, and that's why they claimed him, because they wanted this guy. Well, maybe not exactly, because the Orioles torched him. In those 3 outings, Dubin threw 4 innings and allowed 9 runs on 11 hits with 2 homers against the Orioles offense. So they hit him well, and now he's going to pitch for him. Now, it's a big mix for Dubin because he was a former starter. 4-seamer at 94, which doesn't get hit super hard. He's got a sweeper and a curveball that gets some swings and misses. Also throws a changeup, a cutter, and a sinker. Doesn't throw any of those pitches too much, and all of them have been hit pretty hard this year when he throws him. But it's a little bit of a funky delivery. Everything he throws, all 6 pitches, kind of move in different ways. So there is a lot of funk there from Dubin. And the stuff and the results were just much better the past couple of years. I think the Orioles think at 29, if he's past these injuries, he can kind of get back to his last season version, which is a productive middle reliever for a playoff team. And those are the exact kind of guys they're trying to get in here for the 2026 bullpen. Now, Dubin is out of minor league options. He's already on the 40-man, but the Orioles will have to put him on the active roster when he reports. He was claimed Monday, so I would think by today's day game he will report. Maybe because it's a day game, he won't be here yet. At worst, he'll be with the team on Friday when they go to San Francisco, but it's potential he gets activated here on Thursday. Yennier Cano, Grant Wolfram, and Cade Stroud are the three pitchers on the roster who do have options and could be sent to AAA. Or you could also see potentially like a Roansy Contreras DFA to get him on the roster. But hey, it's another relief pitcher the Orioles are giving a shot to down the stretch to see if he will stick. We'll see if the former Astro in Dubin is a guy who can put together enough to be with this Orioles team and get one of those open bullpen spots heading into next season. That'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to subscribe, follow, leave a 5-star rating and a review wherever you listen. And of course, like, comment, and subscribe right here to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. O's are going to try to avoid the mop. The 4-game sweep on Thursday afternoon. A little matinee baseball, 1:05 p.m. on MASN. Cade Povich will go for the Orioles. Been quite an up and down season for him. A 5.13 ERA in his 17 outings. Hasn't been very good his last 2 times out there against Houston. And unfortunately for the Orioles trying to avoid the mop, they will face Garrett Crochet, the 26-year-old lefty who might just win the Cy Young Award this year. He's got a 2.38 ERA. He struck out 207 batters in 166 innings this year. Last 2 starts have each been 7 innings, 1-run ball. Last one was 11 strikeouts at Yankee Stadium. This guy is just absurd. He's also been, I'll say, very good earlier this year against the Orioles. O's have only faced him once. That was on April 2nd. He went 8 scoreless with 8 strikeouts. Hopefully that doesn't happen again, but we will see. Either way, I'll be back on Friday. I'll recap the final game between the O's and the Sox, get you ready for Orioles Giants this weekend, and maybe do a little bullpen trust power rankings at this kind of new look Orioles bullpen once again. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.